This is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 418 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician and lawyer Mark Feygin. Enjoy. And dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. Today is Monday, April 17th. Time is 2 minutes past 10 in Kiev and the same time in Moscow. We are doing the usual stream, day 418, with Olexiy Arestovych. Glad to see you here, Olexiy. Likewise, Mark. 75,000 are starting with us already. About 20,000 click the like button. As usually, I ask those who have joined already and who are enjoying us live, please help others to do that, to see that stream, even if later. Make sure you share links to that stream in your social media. And if you click the like button, that'll get more eyeballs on the data. Also, of course, if you have not done that yet, please continue subscribing to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English language. Feygin Live is about 8,000 shy of 2,100,000 subscribers, so yeah, don't forget, if you have not subscribed yet, click that button. Same to Alexei's channel. Alright, let's start. Olexiy, sorry, on Friday I want to reference another stream that I was doing with Vladimir Asechkin, the creator of a project gulago.net, and he promised that on Monday, today, there'll be more materials released from more ex-Wagner troops, and there were interesting things published today. There is an interview, there are some video materials from the most horrible things in the list, probably executions of basically children. Of course, that would need to be rechecked, but of course, nobody knows if that was exactly how it happened, and ex-Wagner troop is giving a lot of interesting data. Of course, special services will need to re-verify and check all that. Obviously, Prigozhin himself, the head of Wagner PMC, should be responsible, should be held accountable for all these crimes, and as well as Russian military command, because they are the organizers and sponsors of that organization. And I still don't understand why Wagner PMC is not still in the list of terrorist organizations. It just takes time, Mark. Let's address it step by step. I have no qualms, I have no nothing that holds me from believing that Wagner would be able to commit any of those crimes that you mentioned, by the style of their fighting, by other things happening. So that's not a surprise. Second, these things need to be defined and described as precise as possible, because to recognize Wagner as a terrorist organization and to make it legally and hold the legal responsibility over the heads of Wagner and Russian military, that is important. And all details need to be properly gathered, and evidence as well. And a third needs to be, we need to be careful not to fall into some trap, because if this is somebody who is leaking false information, they can disprove it later, so to discredit us and our efforts. So we need to be careful to make sure we gather everything correct. Now, speaking of Wagner, they would not even exist, or would not even be able to get any weapons, if not for Russian leadership of the military and Putin himself. Now, they have been gathering the inmates from prisons to send to fight on the front, but what we also discovered is that now they're being sent conscripts. So that needs to be also proven. That message showed up, and that fact, if proven, if we actually verify that Wagner is using conscripts at their detachments as well, that puts a firm equal sign between Wagner and Russian leadership, Russian administration, Putin's administration, and military top brass of Russia. And of course, that will take time, but I think with what we have now, it should be already on the list of international terrorist organizations, given their records in Africa, in Syria, in other places, and their relations to those forces in Sudan that are trying to overthrow the government. Do you think there are exact links to them? Are they participating in Sudan, in disturbances there? I do not have that information, but I am watching the international media that are often referring the group that is fighting the government, that is attempting to overthrow it, as a pro-Wagner group. So they definitely had or have or keep having some relation to those militants. All right, let's take a look at the map and see if the situation changed. While Kostya is bringing the map up on the screen, there are a lot of voices talking that situation near Bakhmut and in Bakhmut itself is difficult, and that more than a half of a town is being controlled by Russian troops, Wagner, namely. And they do reference a command given to Wagner from Kremlin and from Russian military to conclude this operation. And apparently they were given or added to them additional paratroopers. Mark, they already had paratroopers. They had the Russian military fighting there. They had some issues with the commanding officer of that group, and who was removed from his position, then returned back to it. So they still need to, people need to understand that those are not the great paratroopers that Putin was so proud of years before, because those 90+% of those are dead. These are the second or the third row, hastily trained, so they are present there. Regardless of presence of the Russian military, they're using artillery, they're using mortars of high caliber, and they are just destroying everything. If one of those hits a multi-story building, it just folds it. So they are advancing not because they're brave or Wagner is so special or paratroopers know how to fight. No. Plus, we do have a ton of videos where we show that these guys also surrender just easily if they have a chance. They are still using artillery to level everything, and when the situation is leveled and our troops withdrew a bit, they pour into the rubble. And the fighting isn't going. It's not simple. They are still active on the north and the south, but it is far from seriously discussing leaving Bakhmut. We theoretized about that many times, but we'll see where it goes. Our command knows what they're doing. They are holding firm and steadfast and guiding our troops. So I have a small question, Olexiy. Let's just imagine that, I don't know when counteroffensive will happen, where the main directions of counterattack will happen. So if Bakhmut will be abandoned, the next line of defense, would it be Chasov Yar? Will that be a next Bakhmut? Mark, even if I knew where the next line of defense is, I would not be able to tell you. There will be some line of defense, right? Could be there, but we cannot confirm 100%. There will be. There is also a lot of heavy fighting near Avdiivka, Marinka, to the north of Kupiansk. They even tried to attack, but they had no success anywhere. And these are materials from our military command. Main events are happening around Bakhmut and around it. And Looking at the gray zone around Bakhmut, you can see that they are attacking in the center, but on the north and the south of it, they were pushed away a little. All right, let's keep going. We have 182,000 with us, 65,000 click the like button. We've been live only for 10 minutes. Please do not forget to press all these buttons, that's important. All right. Vayenkov, the military commissar of Moscow, announced that before the end of spring, they already will launch those electronic writs, electronic conscription service. They are shy to talk about openly about that new mobilization, but this is super fast for this law to be used, to be adopted, and to come into application at the end of spring, right? It's what, second half of April, so we only have maybe May left, and likely they will use that system indeed before the end of the spring in the next couple of weeks. So you think we will be able to call it the next second mobilization via that electronic system? It's questionable, Mark. Can we call it a second wave because they have not fully ceased mobilizing more people to the front, but there could be an increase, and I think from that light, yeah, we could say that. We understand how they will be doing, we understand time frame that they'll be doing it in. I'm not quite sure about the quantity that they will mobilize, because normally you'd need at least 2.5 months to get people to the front in some sensible manner. I'm seriously concerned that most of these conscripts will be just used as meat. They'll be just thrown to the front to plug in the holes in the front. So you mean in front of their fighting troops? Oh yeah, just to plug in the exactly front of the front line. So just as meat. I'm bringing this up, Olexiy, because they're usually spring is usual time for conscription, and they are probably masking it with that by combining these several things together. And I think the problem is not that they're lying, Mark, about all. It is more about showing the haste that it is done with, because they are really concerned about plugging those holes. They'll come the time when they know they'll need that meat. Okay, I don't know if you followed more news today, but today our comrade Vladimir Karamurza was given 25 years in prison. Main accusation was treason. This is unprecedented event. Yeah, right, Mark. Maniac who killed more people, who killed numerous people, is given way less. Exactly. They actually had a Sapok gang a while ago, and they were there was a very loud proceeding because they killed a lot of people in their village, and at tops they got 20 years. The worst of them got 20 years. And in the current situation with Prigozhin, they actually could, if they survive 6 months on the front, then they could come back out into society. But 25 years, that's like Stalin time sentences. Their whole initiatives about Wasserman, about penalties, about penalizing 1 million rubles. This is beyond any legality. Also, they had another initiative, for violations relating to being in Russia or using Russian passport. So it seems like they have a goal to put people in jail for whatever. The only reaction is to put people in jail. And that Congress of Russia keeps printing these laws. And they're trying to basically, I think, separate the country into two groups, the fighting one and the one in jail. And the ones who are in jail should be easily converted into the fighting ones, and the fighting ones into the food for worms in the Ukrainian soil. So if you look at the Congress, they're not even looking at other instruments. Their new laws, they all have penalties, punishment, and prison. So it's all about the inner terror, and they try to expand their corresponding articles of criminal code. So that's what Putin's regime fell down to. And such symbolic people as Kara-Murza, not only that they're being put for 25 years in jail, they also are taking away his right to do journalism and limiting him in other rights. And it's a question of if he even can survive there 20 years because he's not a young guy. So this is an element of state terror in Russia that is escalating. It's not even covered on the outside in their military activity in Ukraine, and it's the same thing, just in a different disguise internally, under leadership of Putin and all his cronies. Yep. The country that is presiding in the United Nations, right? The main element of the Security Council. That's hilarious, right? Speaking of, their foreign minister Lavrov is now visiting Latin America, South America, and he visited Brazil. I think you saw that statement of that Lulu, their new president. So he is a socialist. He was once a president. He skipped one when Bolsonaro was. And now that he is meeting with Lavrov, he is actually coming out and saying that let's give them Crimea to Russia and more territories to stop this war. So I understand that, and also with his facial expressions and bodily gestures, it's almost written on him how much was he paid for that statement. So yeah, Mark, we should not discount that. Lavrov was first visiting Africa, and now he's visiting Latin America. That should not be discounted because these are the areas of ex-colonial tension between those countries and others in the world. So that's where he's fishing for those whom he can offer some support, some money, some whatever, and try to get them on their side. People are laughing that he is visiting some Bantustans in Africa and others, but I want to remind our viewers that early on in this war, about 28 African countries made statements that they require Russia to stop invading Ukraine and that they're against this war. Now, after Lavrov's visit and work with some of the countries, only 10 of them still firmly oppose the war in Ukraine. The others kind of disappeared from that list, and that's out of 55 countries in Africa total. So do you think they're buying them with money? Yeah, the money, relations, maybe some other offers, whatever they can throw on the table. But in essence, that's what Lavrov's trip is about. Now he's working with South America. So, of course, they're working with the left bloc, with the left, ultra-left Brazilian president. Yeah, he was also accused of corruption in his own country. Right. So he's an easy figure. And they're trying to create a coalition of support for Russia, or at least neutral coalition that doesn't want to protest war. So we cannot say this is a harmless activity. This is well-targeted activity that is recognizable to those who studied or lived under Soviet Union, because these guys are exploiting the same machines and same terms that Soviet Union was doing before. So in their view, Latin America is essentially an ally. Russian embassies in those countries, at least 80% are comprised of foreign intelligence service or military intel. Oh, Olexiy, you're giving them some extra 10%. No, they probably 99%. If there is one professional diplomat in the Russian embassy in Latin America, that's a surprise. So yeah, they're working. In essence, Mark, they continue to work, and we cannot treat it lightly. It needs to be countered. Okay, we have about 300,000 with us, and 80,000 click the like button. Please do not forget to click that. Otherwise, Olexiy will completely leave the frame. And it's important to subscribe to both channels and to Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. All right, we discussed the Minister of Defense of China, his visit to Moscow. I'm trying to remember his name. Shulan, if I'm correct, his last name. Let's just call it Chinese Minister of Defense. I'm sorry, I'm traveling and I'm forgetting all these names among my daily work. So anyway, yeah, he did talk with Shoigu. They discussed Pacific Fleet and Pacific region. And as I said, the main topic of this visit was not Ukraine, was the problem of the Far East. Do you think Taiwan as well? No, where's Russia and where's Taiwan? That's not serious. No, they're interested in the corner, probably five-prone figure: China, Japan, South and North Korea, and Russia. There is an interesting set of issues they have. Japan is now getting closer and warmer with South Korea, especially in the defense aspect. And recently, North Koreans launched a missile in direction of Japan. It didn't reach, it fell in the ocean, but Japanese people had to even cover and shelter. So Japan is also supportive of Ukraine, including supporting military and arms to military solutions and arms to Ukraine. Japanese official visited Kiev right after a visit of Xi Jinping. Japanese Prime Minister visited Zelensky. So yeah, they have issues to talk. Plus, remember that situation with map when China printed the map with their names over Russian cities. So it is interesting. It is, though, typical for China and Moscow, because that's the third leader of the military group who visited Moscow in a row. So both predecessors have done that. So they're discussing and addressing the northern ocean route, the problems of the Far East, and yeah, they have other things to discuss there. All right. Newsweek published recently an article that analyzed the documents that were published by that Pentagon Leaks story. We discussed a whole article and all the documents released with Julia Latinina yesterday. Right, very punctual the way she is. Exactly. She's a philologist, and some people are saying she's not a military expert. You know, Mark, I want to intervene here. I want to say a couple of words about her. Trust me, I've seen enough people in my life because of what I've done and my work. I've seen a ton of people who specialize in analytics, and 99% of them would fall short of Yulia's ability to analyze data. And especially if your main specialization is not even military data, it's philology, so that is only additional bow to her that she figured out all that. Plus, she knows English. She already got some training by brushing through the ancient materials and other things she does for her channel. So she's very investigative and very skilled. In any case, she analyzed documents, and she did point that Newsweek mentioned that the 30th of April is likely the date of Ukrainian counteroffensive. So would that be the champagne day when Ukraine starts? Well, Mark, no. It'll be like Alexei Arestovych said, 2-3 weeks. All right, 2-3 weeks. Maybe more pain and butthurt coming to the Russian troops on the front, right? Today, our head of Intel reacted to that. Budanov came out and said that, yes, our counteroffensive will start on time. Yeah, indeed, I'm quoting him. He said, as I promised, it will happen. For example, we will enter Crimea before the end of spring. And personal note, I don't really care if it's spring or summer when you get there. Orcs have stopped advancing maneuvers, so yeah, Russia only is attacking in a couple active spots on the front, and their strategic operation is completely out of steam, and they have no forces to continue that. He was also saying that he knows names of those who of a lot of military criminals that they investigated. I think he's referring to those atrocities that became popular. He says that they do know more details. What would you say about that? Let's start from the back. From Dmitry Lubinets, the representative of the Human Rights Ombudsman. He says that he has dozens of recordings of executions of Ukrainian military by Russia, prisoners of war by Russian troops. So that will be investigated. As in regards to the counteroffensive, of course, it will happen on time. Our command will plan when and how it will happen, and we just need to wait and see and help as much as we can. But it's an interesting radical story, right? If one of the attacks will fall on the Crimea. Well, yeah, but we still need to reach Crimea first. We'll try to, right? I think so. Now they're all probably getting hiccups on the Russian side. We have not agreed to fight like that. Why are you doing that? Right. Okay, there is more information that I want to discuss. Some American media is writing that, and it's always in the gray zone between rumors and information, that Zelensky is upset at the tempo of support and military support by Western allies. And in his opinion, that causes more losses among Ukraine military. There is a direct correlation between the words that we hear that something is running late, some military munitions or long-range missiles or something else is being delayed or not available. It means that Russian troops are killing more Ukrainian military, Ukrainian defenders, who lose their lives, compensating for lack of ammo or lack of weapons. So, in the context of possible counteroffensive, do you think we can talk about violation of the delivery terms? In order to be able to discuss that intelligently, we need to know what the dates were on the calendar, and it's a bit difficult. It's government secret information, so I would just say that any delays in supplies, any delays in getting more arms, more ammo, is linked directly to more losses of our troops on the front, and not only on the front, but also more deaths among civilians, because we're still clearing through the rubble that was recently hit by a Russian missile with a 2-year-old dead child. And it's due to Russian missiles that have no parity on the Ukrainian side. And it's an interesting story if you look at the details of the military doctrine of the West, that, as it is being said, without the firm advantage in air and space warfare, areas of the battle, you cannot discuss the possibility of effective victory. So if that equipment, if that air support is not provided, what conclusions can you make out of it? That actually is being discussed, Olexiy, right? So your counteroffensive, do you think it has perspective without air cover? Mark, we already had 3 successful operations without that in Chernigov, Kharkov, and Sumy, and when we push them near Kiev. But we will be paying with our lives for that. Yes, it is possible to get by without air cover, but the losses will be bigger. So your opinion, why is that not being resolved? Well, today, one of the American officials came out and said that they will supply jets in a 1.5-year time frame. 1.5 years, you serious? That's not me, it's him, right? I would supply even before the war. Well, we are being watched by congressmen in different countries and bureaucrats in different countries and government officials, and they are writing and asking questions, so perhaps you can use that tribune to address them. Well, Mark, we keep explaining to them the consequences of these decisions and keep pointing to their own doctrine documents and showing that they are illogical in their actions, because they at times are, right? And if our president mentions that he dedicates his own attention to that matter, besides the head of military, the head of foreign affairs, including ourselves, we all are on that bandwagon trying to explain to our allies that this is vital, this is very important. So we will continue our struggle. In the Ukrainian language, there is an interesting saying, as a feather on stone. So the feather that rubs away, grinds away the rock, the rocky mountain. So that's what we continue doing. And I think I'm addressing that regularly. And I'm trying not to pick phrases, because it is all directly converted into the blood of our soldiers. There's no reason to choose nice language. You need to explain people the consequences of their indecisiveness. And of course, things are happening. Remember, back half a year ago, they were saying that Patriots and tanks will never be given to Ukraine, and HIMARS at some point were a big no-no. So expanding these categories is just a matter of time. But we need to keep working on this. All right. So there is one more aspect. It kind of touches upon us, since we are working on the information front. It is interesting that that girl... Oh, you mean the chat where they published some of the leaked documents? That one of the girls publishing that was an ex-Marine, Sarah, who was one of those who published the leaked materials of Pentagon that was published in Wall Street Journal, one of the biggest distributors of that information, who portrayed herself as a Russian Jew from Lugansk, was in reality a divorced woman, middle-aged, from New Jersey, veteran of Navy. And she was discovered and unmasked by NAFO, North Atlantic Fellow Organization, that is fighting against Putin's propaganda, and that she was one of the co-moderators of a Telegram channel where they had about 60,000 users. Well, not as effective as we are. Our channels are bigger. Don't forget to subscribe, speaking of. And on her media, she actually published at least 4 files with different classified data, and she was using Mila Medvedev pseudonym online, and Lugansk for Life, and Cheburek Wives, and Meatball Sub-Zero. You can... I don't know how to treat that. That's a weird name. It's a meatball, Mark. That's what it is. I guess it would be fun to give that meatball to, I don't know, Azov or some other Ukrainian fighters for that actions that she have done. No, Mark, I think, speaking of Azov, if she was given to them, nothing would have happened to her. This is a higher morale organization that follows all the Geneva Conventions and all. But she needs to be prosecuted accordingly to American laws. And it's clear, though, special services are always looking for those who are upset. She is upset, right? So she apparently was upset because of the way she was retired from Navy. And special services are always looking for the people who are upset at the system for whatever reason. She has a grudge against the system. And do you know how one of the most important agents was added to the folio? The kid was sick with one of the Russian representatives in the embassy, and his management said no, and so basically to pay for his hospitalization and all. So the guy was, eventually the child died of disease, and the guy was so upset at his leaders that he just came to Intel Services of the United States and offered his service. So yeah, the grudge is always a strong factor. So she was retired and demoted, and here you go. That's the result of it. It just shows once again that if possible, it's not good practice to retire people with demoting. But, it's up to American law to define the difference and the consequences of that. By the way, they do have an ex-colonel, ex-marine on Russian TV. Yeah, some reader, some guy who was in the U.S. Military, and he's talking often on the Russian streams, pouring mud on the allies in Ukraine. Yeah. And there is also Yakov Kedmi, the Israeli military, who is also, oh yeah, that's another propagandist on their channels. So yeah, there are people who are upset for whatever reasons, and they're being exploited and offer them for exploitation. So all right, so that told the public from the United States, including that Hirsch, whom was I'm not even going to mention that blogger who is bringing him up all the time, who's 85 and playing tennis. Mark, Trump's fraction representative in Parliament, that guy stated that, what's his name? The 21-year-old guy who was arrested for Pentagon leak, Teixeira, right? She said that he actually did everything right. He unmasked the damned American government, and that's the words of a congresswoman, who put the label of secrecy on everything, especially on the unjust war of Russia against Ukraine. So even if the congressmen and representatives of the past president of the United States and perhaps a future president of the United States are fighting over that, what can you say about the people with grudges on the system? It's people. Wherever there are people, there are always things like that. All right, since we're talking about Trump, Donald Trump Jr., his son, made a post. I do not have any good words about him. If you read through his statements, he's got a chip against Ukraine. So he posted a map that says Russia is not America, and also not America written over Ukraine. And he said that, I know Ukraine is new religion of the left, but it is not our problem, and we should not waste our resources and army to help one of the corrupt nations in the world. And the leading comment is, an apple is not far from the apple tree. So people continue infighting internally in America. That's understandable, right? But why do people keep bringing Trump and his son as some pro-Ukrainian figures? Well, especially Trump in most cases, because one can say that they don't really care. Not only not care, but they keep harming it, and he keeps harming it in his statements. Because our soldiers who are surviving the shelling of Russian side, sitting under their artillery and mortars on the front, and under the sunburns and all the other reactive systems, sometimes they open media and they read the statements, and they read the statement from a possible future president of the United States. How should they react to that? I would say Russian language does not have adequate words for that, neither Ukrainian, to address it right. In America, yes, they do have extreme right isolationist group that is saying that the United States should not be dealing with Ukraine. Ukraine is a new project of the left, and the left is worse than Putin. And to fight the left, they need to stop funding Ukraine or supporting Ukraine. And they believe they find common language with their friend Vladimir at any time. See, Mark, I'm an ex-representative of President's office. If I was just a blogger, I would have said what I think. But here I'll try to say politely. Statements like that cause surprise emotions and reflect very negatively on the image of the United States in Ukraine and among the allies. That is sad. That is pretty sad. And it also does affect the public opinion in different countries, including Ukraine, against such rhetoric. So we'll see how elections unfold. I mean, primaries that will determine the candidates for the final round. If Trump doesn't win that, he will have probably no chances of winning. I would say a couple words about him in this case, but I should not. All right, we've been almost 45 minutes live. We're close to 300,000 watching us. Over 160,000 click the like button. Don't know details about Alexei's. But, oh, Mark, I have 3 more words. Okay. We sent a second appeal about blocking the deal, the grain deal by Russia. Borrell in Europe confirmed that they see 50 ships being blocked and stalled by Russian Federation. And this is a big issue that is threatening with hunger to Middle East countries and countries of North Africa, and international community needs to react to that. Second, Alla Pugacheva had her birthday, that famous singer had her birthday on the 15th of April. I want to congratulate her personally. She's a great human and a great singer, and she had seen a ton of political leaders in her career from USSR to the recent times. And every time she showed that she's a good judge of people's character, and she's a human of the highest caliber, and who's got very high ethics and standards. So happy birthday, Alla, and Alla Borisovna. And also, I do want to mention that I visited Kievan Institute of Culture, where rector is Mikhail Poplavsky, and I did talk to his students. And they are surprisingly well-versed in issues and international issues. And they're asking United States, China, Ukraine, America perspectives after this war. You think they're watching our streams? Yeah, they are. And it's not even about that. They generally have a great command of subject. I'm used to simplifying things to explain them to people. And they were asking questions that would make an honor to hear from Colonel of the Intel Services. So I do want to say my deepest regards to students of that institute and to the Mikhail Poplavsky leadership of that establishment. He's the singing rector, right? He's a fun guy. He is a great leader. He somehow managed to combine the atmosphere of home coziness and top-level education environment. He somehow managed. So that song, Young Eagle, is that his? Yeah, that's his. Yeah, he's a fun fella. And yeah, we posted 2 pictures of young eagles of him and myself, and the internet is reacting today. But I do want to send good regards, kind regards to that institute and the rector. Okay, great. And one last thing I wanted to bring up. It's minute 43 of our stream. As you understand, I'm also traveling, and I have that lapel microphone on my jacket, trying not to interfere with audio between each other because internet varies by location. Let us know if the sound was any good. We keep experimenting to maintain the quality standards. And one last thing I wanted to address is information about Mikhail Saakashvili. There will be news there. It's just a time when we should not be addressing it in public. I am in touch with all the participating parties, and sometimes there are moments when it's better to keep mum and to not bring light. To that, the work is going. We'll see how it ends. There still is a possibility for a negative outcome, but we are doing our best, and it is moving. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I was defending people in court. I know there are times when it should not be discussed, when it needs some quiet moment. We are working. We're not abandoning anyone, and I'm addressing your questions in chat. Yeah, we do not abandon our friends, right? Process is going, but has some hurdles. All right, we'll see you next on Wednesday, Olexiy, and we'll talk about new topics that will arise. Please do not forget to share links, click subscribe, and of course subscribe to Privateer Station if you have not done that yet, if you are listening or watching that in English. See you on Wednesday. Goodbye, everybody.